What happens when a police sergeant, used to throwing his weight around, pulls over the wrong woman? Not just the wrong woman, but one who holds more power, respect, and influence than he could ever imagine. This isn't just a story about a late-night traffic stop, it's about what happens when authority meets the kind of discipline that can't be intimidated. It began on a quiet Thursday night in Brenton, Ohio. The streets were nearly empty, just a scattering of night shift workers heading home and the occasional truck humming along the interstate. At 11:27 p.m., a black government-issued SUV rolled through the near-empty intersection of Madison Avenue. The driver was Colonel Mara Ellison, a career officer returning from a strategic operations meeting at a National Guard facility over 2 hours south. Mara's vehicle was unremarkable, clean, discreet, windows slightly tinted, nothing flashy. Inside, she was humming softly to the steady rhythm of the tires. The long drive had worn at her, but her mind was already half home. She wasn't speeding, swerving, or doing anything to stand out. But someone else on the road saw her differently. Parked in a shadowed lot just off Oak Ridge Boulevard sat Sergeant Dean Hartley. 15 years on the Brenton PD had carved deep lines in his face and even deeper habits into his approach to the job. That night, he sat in his cruiser, sipping tepid coffee, scrolling half-heartedly through his phone. The shift had been a bore, no major calls, no adrenaline. Then, headlights swept across his windshield. The unfamiliar SUV caught his attention instantly. He straightened, tossed the coffee into the cup holder, and slid his thumb over the light controls. The cruiser's headlights flashed to life, followed immediately by the sharp red and blue pulse of the overhead bar. Inside her SUV, Mara saw the sudden flash in her rearview mirror. Her training kicked in before she even processed why. She slowed, signaled, and pulled neatly to the curb. Calm, deliberate, controlled, the kind of presence that comes from years of navigating tense situations. The slam of the patrol car's door broke the stillness. In her side mirror, she watched Hartley approach. His flashlight beam cut across her windows, and his right hand rested on the butt of his holstered sidearm. No approach from the passenger side, he went straight to hers. "License and registration," he said. No greeting, no explanation. Mara kept both hands visible on the steering wheel, rolling the driver's side window halfway down. Her tone was level. "Officer, may I ask why I'm being stopped?" "You were drifting between lanes," Hartley said, squinting against his own flashlight glare. "Didn't signal. Looked like you might be under the influence." Her brow lifted just slightly. "I wasn't." "License and registration," he repeated, louder this time. She didn't argue. Every motion she made was deliberate, reaching slowly toward the glove box, retrieving her documents, handing them over. "That's a government vehicle," she added evenly. "I'm a federal employee." He glanced at the ID, smirked faintly. "Military?" "Yes." "Doesn't mean you're above the law," he said. "I never claimed to be." His tone sharpened. "Step out of the vehicle for me." Her posture stiffened. "Excuse me?" "I said step out of the car." "Sobriety check." Her jaw tightened, but she kept her voice steady. "On what grounds?" "I've complied. I haven't been drinking. I'd like to know the reason." "You're refusing a lawful order now," he shot back, taking a step closer. "No," she said calmly. "I'm asking for clarification." That answer didn't suit him. He reached for her door handle. "Exit the vehicle." Mara reached for her phone. Without raising her voice, she pressed the camera icon. "Just so we're clear," she said, "this interaction is being documented." For the first time, Hartley's eyes flickered to the phone, just a hint of hesitation, but he didn't back down. Out of the car. She stepped out, spine straight, movements controlled. Even in civilian clothes, her posture carried the quiet authority of someone who had led others in life-or-death situations. Hartley sized her up again, but his ego was louder than his instincts. Under the harsh yellow glow of a streetlight, he put her through a field sobriety test. Walk in a straight line. Turn. Repeat. She executed each step flawlessly, no stumble, no hesitation, not even a tremor in her voice when she answered his curt questions. Still, Hartley wrote her a citation for failure to maintain lane. Mara accepted the ticket without comment, slid back into her SUV, and drove off into the dark. What Hartley didn't know was that the ticket he had just handed her was going to follow him into a courtroom, and it would be the kind of fight he'd never faced before. Hartley wasn't a rookie. 15 years had built him a reputation, both the kind rookies whispered about in locker rooms and the kind that had supervisors sighing but never intervening. He was quick to escalate, slow to apologize, and deeply convinced that the badge gave him the final word in any situation. At the Westside Precinct, his colleagues knew he was efficient with paperwork and always on time for shift change. But they also knew his temper, his sharp tone, and his tendency to treat respect as something demanded, never earned. No one really challenged him. Until now. Back at the station, Hartley logged the citation, wrote the standard boilerplate, failure to maintain lane, possible signs of impairment, no arrest, and docked his body cam into the charger. The footage sat there, unreviewed. In the break room, he recounted the stop with a grin. Woman tried to pull rank on me, he told Officer Riley. Flashed her government ID like it was supposed to scare me. For a moment, he just stared at the paper. Then he let out a sharp laugh. No way this sticks. Inside the station, his captain, Glenn Varner, was waiting. Hartley, my office. Now. Hartley stepped inside, arms folded. What's this about? That woman from the other night trying to play victim. Varner's expression was grave. She's not playing anything. Do you know who she is? I don't care who she is. She got pulled over, acted smug, and now she's mad I didn't roll out the red carpet. Varner leaned forward, voice low. She's a combat veteran with a spotless record. She's respected across military and federal channels. And she's got the whole thing on tape, 2 angles. Yours and hers. Hartley tried to wave it off, but something in his captain's tone hit differently this time. You're going to court, Varner continued. And when this gets out, and it will, you'd better be ready for the fallout. As the court date approached, whispers began swirling in the precinct. Hartley could feel it in the locker room, the quiet conversations that stopped when he walked in, the sideways glances. He wasn't the untouchable wolf anymore, he was bleeding in the water, and everyone could smell it. Mara, on the other hand, prepared in silence. She met with her attorney, Elise Warren, reviewing every second of the footage. She outlined each detail of her experience, from Hartley's tone to the exact angle of his stance by her driver's side door. You sure you want to go through with this in open court? Elise asked. It'll be public. It'll follow you. Good, Mara replied. Most people would just let it go. I've let too much go already, Mara said. This isn't just about me. She wasn't chasing money. She wanted something permanent, a record that could be referenced the next time someone thought a badge was a shield against accountability. Court day. 3 weeks later, the Brenton Civil Courthouse buzzed with a low undercurrent of tension. The gallery was filled not with reporters, but with uniformed officers, both local and military, alongside civilians curious enough to follow the case. Hartley was already seated at the defense table when the side door opened. Mara entered in full-service uniform. Medals glinted under the fluorescent lights, the silver eagle insignia on her shoulders was unmistakable. Conversations in the gallery hushed instantly. Hartley's smirk faltered. The judge's voice carried across the room. Colonel Ellison, thank you for your service. You may proceed. Elise Warren approached the stand. Colonel, can you describe the night of March 4th? Mara's voice was calm, steady. I was driving back from a meeting at the National Guard Reserve around 11:30 p.m. I was pulled over by Sergeant Hartley. There was no erratic driving, no signs of intoxication. I complied with every request. When I asked why I was being ordered out of my vehicle, he repeated the demand without explanation. At that point, I began recording the interaction on my phone. Did you refuse any lawful orders? No. Did you resist in any way? No. Did you identify yourself? Yes. I stated I was a federal employee driving a government-issued vehicle. The courtroom was silent except for the scratching of pens. Then, the evidence played. First, Mara's phone footage, steady, clear, capturing every word. Then, Hartley's own body cam. The contrast was damning. His clipped responses, the hand resting near his weapon even when she was cooperative, the unnecessary field test, it was all there. You could feel the shift in the room. When the playback ended, no one in the jury box moved. You could almost hear the weight of what they'd just seen settling over the room. The defense attorney, a neatly dressed man named Charles Brenner, rose slowly. His tone was measured, respectful, but calculated. Colonel Ellison, is it possible Sergeant Hartley was simply following protocol? No, Mara said plainly. Could he have been concerned for your safety or the safety of others? I was driving within the lines. I was sober. I was not aggressive. There was no safety concern. Brenner's gaze sharpened. And yet, you recorded the stop. Why? Because I've lived long enough to know silence isn't protection, she answered. I wanted an accurate record of what happened. So you don't believe officers should have discretion during stops? I believe discretion must be paired with discipline, she said, her voice calm but cutting. That badge isn't a free pass, it's a responsibility. Even the judge paused for a moment before moving on. Then it was Hartley's turn, not to testify on his own behalf, but to face the prosecution's questions. The body cam footage rolled again, this time frame by frame. Sergeant Hartley, the prosecutor began, why did you ask her to exit the vehicle? She looked evasive, Hartley said stiffly. Did she disobey any of your commands? She questioned me. Is that illegal? Hartley hesitated. No. Did she raise her voice? Make threats? No. So what made you escalate the stop? Hartley said nothing. Were you aware she was a colonel in the U.S. Army? Not at the time. And if you had known? Hartley's voice dropped. I probably would have handled it differently. The room went utterly still. It was the closest thing to an admission anyone would get from him. And it confirmed what everyone had suspected, he hadn't seen a person that night, just someone who didn't submit fast enough. Riley tilted his head. She was military. So she says. Some fed with an attitude. What was her name? Ellison. Mara Ellison. Riley's expression changed. Colonel Ellison. You're kidding. Hartley narrowed his eyes. You know her. She spoke at the academy last year, Riley said slowly. She's not just military, she's high-ranking. Runs logistics for the 42nd Support Division. 2 deployments. She's legit. Hartley waved him off. Doesn't matter. On the road, I'm the authority. But Riley's tone had planted a seed of unease. For the first time in a long while, Hartley felt the faintest edge of doubt. The next morning, Mara filed a formal complaint. Not just with Internal Affairs. Not just with the Brenton Police Oversight Board. She also sent her footage, and her account, to the Office of the Inspector General. Her email was measured, concise, and backed by undeniable video evidence. Within hours, it began moving up channels, quietly but steadily. Her attorney had a copy. The military chain of command had a copy. And before long, whispers started circulating in the kind of circles Hartley had never crossed before. But he still had no idea. By the following week, The ripples from that single traffic stop had reached well beyond Brenton's city limits. In Hartley's world, nothing seemed different. He was still barking orders during routine stops, still wearing the same smug half-smile when issuing citations. But in Mara Ellison's world, gears were already turning. Back at the 42nd Support Division headquarters in Greenfield, Indiana, she sat in her office in the pre-dawn quiet, her coffee untouched. The incident replayed in her mind with unsettling clarity, not just the words, but the tone. The hovering hand on the holster. The way Hartley spoke to her like she was disposable. She had been in dangerous situations before, convoys in active war zones, relief missions in chaotic disaster areas, but something about this was different. This wasn't chaos. This was control abused in its most casual form. Her aide, Staff Sergeant Kean Mitchell, stepped into the doorway. "Morning, ma'am. You holding up?" Mara didn't look away from her screen. "Not great. But I'm handling it." He closed the door behind him. "I saw the footage. You want me to loop in the base legal officer?" "Already done," she said. "You sure you want to push this into the public arena?" Mara leaned back in her chair. "I'm not looking for headlines. I'm looking for accountability." Hartley's first sign that things weren't routine came in the form of a thin manila envelope left on his desk. He tore it open in the parking lot, expecting some mundane departmental memo. Instead, he found a formal notice to appear in Brenton Civil Court. Plaintiff, Colonel Mara Ellison. Charges, violation of constitutional rights during a traffic stop, unlawful detainment, intimidation, and abuse of authority. 3 days later, the jury filed back in. No uniforms in the gallery this time, no curious crowd, just the core parties and a handful of locals who'd followed the case. Judge Elaine Voss read from the verdict form. In the matter of Ellison versus Hartley, the jury finds in favor of the plaintiff. Hartley's jaw tightened. The court recognizes a violation of constitutional rights during an unlawful stop and detainment. Furthermore, the court finds that the actions taken by Sergeant Hartley were not aligned with department policy or the basic expectations of professional conduct. The plaintiff is awarded damages in the amount of $35,000. This decision will remain on permanent public record and will be forwarded to the Department of Justice and the Brenton Police Department for internal review. Mara didn't smile. She didn't pump her fist. She simply nodded once, more to herself than to anyone else. She had done exactly what she came to do. Outside, reporters clustered on the courthouse steps. Hartley kept his head down, covering his face with a folder as cameras clicked. He offered no statement before driving away. Inside, Mara checked her phone. A single notification from her attorney, verdict in your favor. Case closed. You could have asked for more, Elise said quietly. It was never about the money, Mara replied. You think this will change anything? Mara looked toward the courthouse doors. I don't know. But maybe next time he pulls someone over, he'll think twice. A week later, Hartley was placed on administrative leave pending an internal investigation. Some said he'd be reassigned. Others whispered that his career was effectively over. Either way, the badge that had once been his shield now bore a crack everyone could see. Mara returned to duty like nothing had happened. She didn't give interviews or seek the spotlight. But within her command, the message was unmistakable. You don't have to raise your voice to demand respect, and you don't have to back down to prove you were wronged. 2 months later. In a training auditorium filled with fresh recruits, Colonel Mara Ellison stood before a sea of eager faces. Most had been in uniform for only a few weeks. How many of you, she asked, think wearing this uniform automatically earns you respect? A few tentative hands went up. She nodded. I understand why you'd think that. But respect isn't something you're owed. It's something you prove, every day, with every choice. Same goes for power. The badge, the rank, the authority, it's not a shield. It's a weight. And if you can't carry it with discipline, you don't deserve to carry it at all. The room was silent now, not with disinterest, but with focus. When I was stopped by an officer who forgot that truth, I could have yelled. I could have panicked. I could have let it go. I didn't do any of those things. I documented it. I filed the report. I showed up in court. And I told the truth. That officer thought his badge made him untouchable, until he saw my rank. Not just on my uniform, but in how I carried myself. That's the difference. That's leadership. She closed her folder and stepped down from the podium. Lead with character. Serve with integrity. And never forget, you don't just represent the uniform. You represent every person who came before you and everyone who will come after. Authority without accountability is just a mask for weakness. Speak up. Stand firm. And when you see wrong, don't look away. Because silence is comfort for the guilty, but courage is protection for the rest of us. And with that, she walked out, not for applause, but because her work, as always, was already waiting.